Hello, and welcome to the Homeschool Sanity Show, your prescription for happier, healthier homeschooling. I'm your host, Dr. Melanie Wilson, Christian psychologist turned homeschooling mother of 6. Let's get started. Hey, homeschoolers. I'm passionate about teaching my kids about finances. I believe it's a critical life skill and one that I didn't personally have a good education in. Before I introduce my guest for today's interview, I want to thank my sponsor for this episode, CTC Math. CTC Math specializes in providing online video tutorials that take a multi-sensory approach to learning. Favorably reviewed in Kathy Duffy's 102 Top Picks and the Old Schoolhouse Crew Review, the lessons are short and concise to help your children break down concepts and appreciate math in a whole new way. The lessons are taught the traditional way, not to a test. Each one of the video tutorials is taught by an internationally acclaimed teacher, Pat Murray, who is renowned for teaching math concepts in a simple, easy-to-understand way in only a few minutes at a time. Using a multi-sensory approach to having the combination of effective graphics and animation synchronized with the voice of a friendly teacher together with practical assessment. This three-pronged attack makes learning so much easier and more effective. Even students who struggled with math are getting fantastic results. And ones who were doing okay before are now doing brilliantly. Visit ctcmath.com today to start your free trial. Now for this week's topic, how to use finances as a teaching tool. My guest is Benny Nachman, CEO of Jazzby, a finance app for families. Benny is a serial entrepreneur with a proven track record in building a global bank with over 30 licenses around the world. Hope you enjoy our interview.
Benny, thank you so much for joining me here on the Homeschool Sanity Show podcast. I would love to start by having you introduce yourself to my audience and tell us more about your background.
Sure thing. So thank you so much for having me. It's so much fun. Tell you about myself. Well, I was born and raised in Israel. I don't know if you can still hear my accent. Probably yes. I've been here for 15 years now. Lived in California for a while, and now for about a decade, I'm in the East Coast. I'm in Massachusetts. Got here because of my wife, who was here. So I joined her in the Silicon Valley. My wife is the real brains in the family. She's a computer engineer. She designs chips and stuff like that. And I always tell people I used to be an attorney. Don't hold it against me. I haven't practiced in many years. But more than anything else, the core of me, or my heart is in being an entrepreneur. So I start businesses, I start companies. It was always like that. I had a small startup when I was in law school, when I was a kid in law school. And then, I went out, I finished law school, I practiced for a few years. And when I was practicing, part of my job at the office that I worked for was doing banking related work. So it wasn't hardcore banking. It was always like ancillary, credit card processing, KYC, anti-money laundering, things like that. And my second company, so after, the little gig that I had as a law school, is that in 2007, when I was already here in the US, I decided to start a company called CreditOx. And I didn't know enough. I knew very little about fintech at the time. I thought that I knew more because of my, practice, but I really knew very little. And CreditOx is a global acquiring bank and processor. So we process credit cards and debit cards and alternative payments for many, many merchants in many countries. So I started it in late 2007, was the CEO until 2016, when I stepped back and we brought a quote-unquote professional CEO. I'm the chairman of the board and still a large shareholder. And Credorax today, we have bank licenses in some 28 countries around the world. We process for thousands of merchants, I think well over 5,000. We'll probably finish 2020 with some $8 billion in volume. Company has about 320 something people. So, it gave me a lot of good, I think, perspective, both on the fintech industry, but also on, building a company from when we started. It was me with two partners to 300 and something people and billions of dollars and so on. And then about 3 years almost, in 2017, I started my latest project, my new baby, which is Jazzby. And this company is still a fintech company, but with a different twist. And this is aimed at kids and teenagers and families. And our main goal is to bring financial literacy into the American family.
Well, I
hope
great.
That wasn't too long-winded.
No, I think that's so interesting. And, homeschoolers are often very interested in entrepreneurship and in having their kids start their own businesses. So I think you're an inspiration that way as well. But we are going to talk about financial literacy during our interview. What do you think are the main principles or the basic principles of financial management that we have to be sure to teach our kids?
So I tell you, I think maybe even a step back before we talk, I think there are 2 or 3 of those, but before is just talk to kids about money and about how money behaves and how it operates, and tell them basic things like what interest is and how it works. So I think our biggest sin as a society is that it's like a double-edged sword. One, we've stopped talking about money with our kids at home. So in most households, and it crosses, by the way, this is not limited. Like if you are a richer family or more affluent, you speak more about money and vice versa, but it's not true. So nobody talks about money at home. And at the same time, again, as a society, we apparently made a decision. I don't think it was ever really a decision, but what happened is that nobody discusses money at schools as well. Before I started Jazzby, I did some market research, and one of the things that I was shocked, my kids, they're both born in California, but most of their lives are in Massachusetts. So when they started going to the school system, I was very surprised that there is nothing about money and nothing about financial management. And maybe, because of my job, right, it really threw me off, and I thought that cannot be. Maybe that's like just the area that I live in or something like that. And I did a little research, and I think I remember correctly, in 41 out of the 50 states, there is absolutely zero, in any time at all, that the school system talks to kids about money or financial literacy. The other 9, there is some. It's some, but borderline or nothing. It's like, I don't know, a few hours a year. It's almost non-existent. So as a society, again, we don't talk to kids about money at home. We don't talk to them about money in school. And then you have young adults going into life, and they don't know what interest is, or what an APR is, or what cumulative interest, and why it's not a good idea not only to pay your minimum payments on your credit card. And it's not their fault. We've never talked to them about it. How would they know? So I would tell you that before anything else, talk to kids about money, and whatever. Basically, you don't have to be Warren Buffett. It doesn't have to be like some, some very deep lecture. Just a little bit. What's interest? How interest can be your friend when you save, and your enemy when you are borrowing money. Basic things. And you know more about this than your 12-year-old, guaranteed. Doesn't matter who you are. So a little bit before anything else goes a long way. So that's a subject that is easy to talk about. It's natural to talk about. Then I will tell you 2 other things. So in my mind, the 2 basic things that would make your kids' future and their potential for success, financial success, so much more, is talk to them about savings and talk to them about investing.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't have to be a lot, a few dollars a week, whatever works for you. But those two concepts, if you can encourage them and if you can somehow make them into a habit, that's a huge, huge advantage that you or your kids are going to have on their peers.
Right. Why do you think it is that as a culture, we don't talk much about money with our kids?
A great question. The honest answer is that I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
but I have a few guesses, and I think, again, I've been here a long time now, but it's still like in some parts of me, I'm still, an immigrant. So I think I have this point of view that I can be both from the inside and from the outside, if that makes sense to you.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody, I think that's not my original thing, but I've read somewhere and I remember it because it really, it struck me as true, is that somebody said that money in our society, and this has been going on for a while now, this is not new, this is 15 years, maybe more, is that, in Victorian eras, in 19th century, England, sex was a taboo.
Mm-hmm.
Today, we talk about it all the time with kids, all the time. And there is sex ed in school. It's like you can't get enough of it. And we don't talk. So money became our, what sex was for Victorian times. You know what I mean? And nobody talks about it. Mm-hmm. And if I need to venture a guess on why that is, so I give you two reasons. I think at home, it's split. So I think at home, because a lot of people feel that they don't know enough or they're not experts enough, quote unquote, to talk to kids about it. So again, if I'm not Warren Buffett, then who am I to talk to my kid about money? And that's obviously not true. Because even if you're not an expert, and let's face it, most of us, if not all of us, are not, you still, again, know more than your 14-year-old. And it's great. And even if you're really, really horrible about this, so learn together. It doesn't matter. It's no reason not to talk to your kids about it. Mm-hmm. The other reason, I think, is that a lot of us feel that we don't set a good enough example. So if I'm not saving enough in my personal life as an adult, as a parent, who am I then to go to my kid and say, hey, you need to save, because I don't. So what kind of an example I am? And then there's this embarrassment or sense of awkwardness or stuff like that. So I think those are the two main reasons that parents don't talk about money at home. Mm-hmm. The school is, I think, a little bit more complicated, and I think is a little bit more. So when I talk to our users in JASB, those two reasons come up a lot when we talk about why don't you talk to your kids about money. So I feel very confident about that. About schools, that nobody ever gives, I think, a straight answer. There's always dancing around it. And you hear a lot of things about budgets, but I think those are all excuses. So if you ask me, I think that money became such a sensitive issue in the last couple of decades. Mm-hmm. And if you talk about it at school, you'll need to acknowledge that not everybody has an equal amount of it. And then it doesn't matter on what side of the political aisle you are. Mm-hmm. In either one of those aisles, it's an uncomfortable situation because not everybody has the same amount, and then you need to explain why. And then you get into hot water and everybody hates you. So the safe thing is not to talk about it. Right. So that's my guess. I was never told that this is the reason, because obviously nobody can admit it. But I would bet money on that.
Okay. Well, that was very interesting. I had not really thought of it that way. I think one other factor that may come into play for not talking about it at home is that you don't want your kids to talk to their friends about your family finances. You don't want that. My kids have come home and said, oh, my friend's dad is rich. They have this much money. And, my friend said they have so much money. And so there is this idea that you really don't want your kids talking to their friends about your family finances. And so you kind of hold it close to the vest.
I agree. So, no. What I mean is that when you talk to them about money, it doesn't mean that you need to put your W-2 and 401k in front of them and say, okay,
right.
Let's plan your inheritance. What I mean is that talk to them about the concept. Or okay, so we make money. Never mind how much. Don't tell them how much. Mm-hmm. But this is what we do. So we do a budget. This is what we plan. If we go on vacation, we need to make sure that we can afford it, regardless if it's how much it is. Never talk about. It's not about the dollar amount. It's about the idea again. What is interest? How does that work? Mm-hmm. What's insurance? How does that work? So you can have a chat with your kid about the fact that when you drive your car, the car is insured and why it is insured. And you don't have to tell them how much the car costs or how much you pay in insurance, but just the concept. And one of the things that I found out is that most of them don't care. Right. It's not about the dollar amount. It doesn't matter. And depends, well, it depends on the age, right? Obviously, an 8-year-old and a 15-year-old, it's a different level of sophistication. But in vast majority of I think, cases, the actual dollar amount matters less. What matters is like, okay, so what do we do? Why do we buy insurance?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that's very, very helpful. And I'm glad that you clarified that. I do think that parents have this idea that in order to talk about finances, that they have to give the details. And you're saying, no, you don't.
No,
not about your personal finances. Yeah.
I never do. And I doubt that, I don't think that my kids know how much I make as a salary or my wife makes. We've never talked to them again about the dollar figures, but I talk to them about insurance and about interest and about borrowing money and saving and all of those things. And the examples that I give them, by the way, are always around numbers that they can relate to, right? So, okay, so take, I don't know, you have $50 right now. What happens if you save this for a few months and you get 10%? And, so it's always about their numbers, not mine.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Well, that leads me to another question. So as a parent, how much money should I be telling my kids to save for their long-term goals versus what they can spend now on things that they want?
Another great question. I have absolutely no idea. And I think that because there is no answer. So you know what I mean? I think it really, so there is this great book that I love, and I forgot who is the author. I'm sorry about that. But the book is called The Opposite of Spoiled. And I'll tell you, so why am I talking about this? Is, when I was a kid, I grew up in a family where we were, we were trying to be middle class. It's like my repeated joke. My dad was a police officer who passed away when I was relatively young. My mom was a homemaker that, she never walked outside the house, and we really, really didn't have a lot of money, if at all. And, my childhood and early adulthood was always around, trying to make, ends meet. And a few years ago, my older son started playing golf, and one of the summers, 4 years ago, I don't remember, around, I think a year before I started Jazzby, we signed up for like father-son golf tournament around this, again, early summer, and we were driving around New England to all kinds of clubs, and I was, watching him putting his white glove on his hand and doing a drive. And I thought to myself that when I was 10 years old, my experiences were vastly, vastly different. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I always worry about is that and I have two boys, how to make sure that they don't grow up to be spoiled. Okay. And so one of the things that I love about that book, The Opposite of Spoiled, is that they talk about having those three buckets, right? The money that you can spend, the money that you save, and the money that you use to do good. And, do good means give back to the community, it's charity, it's work, it's donation, it's again, whatever works for you. So I always think it's those three buckets is my belief, and I try to make this happen in Jasby as well. So the spending money, savings, and do good. And then each family, you decide what works for you and for your kid. And it depends on what's your income, how much free cash you have, how much of this do you give to your kids, what are your kids' ages, or what are their needs, right? Do they have a job? Do they not, if they're old enough to have a job, right? So there's a lot of variables here. So it's not, I can't just give you an answer. I can tell you that what I see is from users is that we have families that I hear that are doing 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 between spend, save, and do good. And some of them do 80% spend and 10% save and 10% good. I think that's like the two, and some are, and you have people anywhere in between. And I really believe that it doesn't matter. So as long as you educate your kids to save, I don't care if it's $1 a week or 50, and it doesn't matter. Again, for some people, $1 a week is a lot. For some people, 50 a week, it's not. But at the end of the day, if there is a consistent message and a consistent action of savings, that's what you want, right? Because it's not about exact dollar amount.
Right.
And then, again, as your kid becomes older, and if they have a job, if they don't have a job, each circumstance in each family is very different. Just find your spot. And also it can change. You can start with saying, you know what, I want them to save more because they're young and they don't need that money to spend. And 2 years later, you say, something, you started going out with your friends, so it's okay if you save a little bit less, as long as there's persistence in actually doing it.
Excellent. Okay. What are the benefits of giving kids an allowance or paying them for chores? I know some families are really opposed to that. So if a child gets money for a birthday or a holiday, then, they will learn how to spend that, but they don't want to actually give them an allowance or pay them to do things around the house that they think that they should just be doing. Do you think there are some advantages and benefits of doing that, though, giving kids money to manage?
Yes, absolutely. So again, I can share with you some of the data, some of the things that we see from how families and how people do it or go about it. So 2.5 methods, right? So there's those families will say, here's your weekly or here's your monthly allowance. The younger the kids are, the more we see weekly. The older they are, the more we see monthly. And then that's your allowance, and everything else. So the chores around the house are expected. You live here, so you're going to help to clean the dishes or take out the garbage or feed the dog or whatnot. And we're not paying you for that. The other angle is the other extreme, maybe, if you will, is that people say, we don't give allowance, but do something, you can earn your keep, right? So you can wash the dishes, we'll give you something, walk the dogs, we'll give you something, and so on. What I do, by the way, which again we see a lot of people do, is somewhere in between. So our kids are still relatively young, so we do still weekly allowance. I think for my older kid who is now in middle school, will soon switch to monthly, and I'll talk in a second about why. So we give them allowance, and we don't pay for chores. Chores are expected because you live here. Being good at school is expected because that's your job. However, if there is some extraordinary, a spring cleanup, something that's really outside, it's not feeding the dog, right? Something that's really outside the normal scope, then we will compensate them for that, because that's unusual. But that's a few times a year, right? I don't know, 3-4 times a year. Why do it at all? So the data shows, and this has been shown for many years, and this has been shown across cultures, so this is not only US numbers, that if you give kids the ability to manage some budget, again, depends on their age and level of sophistication, they grow up to be more fiscally responsible young adults and then adults. It gives them more experiences. The younger you started, by the way, and again, obviously not a baby, but we see users as early as 8-year-olds, so 3rd grade, something like that. They're completely old enough to understand. And if you let them manage some money, you do a few things. So one, again, as I mentioned before, the data shows, it's just fact, they'll grow up better responsible because of that. Excellent. The other thing I think also, even on a philosophical level, is that it empowers them, right? Which is, I think, what we want. It gives them the ability to make decisions. It takes away, again, it's not magic, but it takes away some of the, hey, Dad, can I have that? Can you buy me that? Because now, listen, man, like, I gave you the money for the month. You make the decision to buy what you want. And if you're out of it, the money, then next time think about it better. It gives more responsibility to them, which is a good thing. It's, I think that one of the mistakes that we do, all of us, is that we baby our kids too much and too long. So the more responsibility you can give them, and again, you start when they're young, so you give them a little bit of money every week. So why every week? Because they'll make a mistake, but they don't need to wait a lot to correct it, right? So next week you start again. So it doesn't matter. Like, you make a mistake, a few days you're upset, but Sunday comes and you start all over again. When they're a little bit older, like I said, I think I'm literally going to do this for my middle school kid. You can do this on a monthly basis, right? So you can do it 2 weeks with your paycheck. It doesn't matter. 2 weeks is a good, by the way, because you can tell them, hey, I get paid every 2 weeks, and so do you. So we calculate our budget on a 2-week basis, and so do you. Right? Why do it? Because it sends the right message, and because it works.
Excellent. That has certainly been my experience. I'm very glad that I gave my kids an allowance. And also paid them for extra responsibilities like mowing the lawn. That is something that they get paid for.
Which is fair, by the way, right? Because if you would hire an outside, exactly.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so I'm thinking about a family who is listening right now, and their finances are a mess. And that family could be wondering, how do I even start to teach my kids financial literacy when my own financial house is not in order? Where should I begin?
So as we mentioned before, I think that's one of the biggest hurdles. And, there's a famous quote that I love, and I say it all the time, is that best is enemy of the good. You don't have to be perfect in anything you do in life, I think. Do something, start, then make it better. If you wait until everything is perfect, you never do anything. You never leave the house. It's not a good way to do things. So where do you start? You start by having a conversation. You start by saying, hey, son, hey, daughter. I have boys, so I always say son. I want to talk to you about your allowance. So you're old enough, depending again what you decide as a parent, you become of age, right? So it's an empowering thing, and we're going to give you that many dollars every week, every 2 weeks, every month. And now let's talk about it a little bit. My expectation of you, and I know that you like money, all of us do, and I know that you like to spend, and you're probably going to run and buy video games, which is okay. My expectation of you is to think about those 3 things. Some money you will spend. I want you to think what you're going to buy and how much it costs, and make maybe a list and think, what's your priority within this money that you're going to spend. But I expect you to also do good and give back to the community. And I also expect you to save. You know why you should save? Because saving is the way of how you become better and how you become richer in the future. No shame. Tell them, hey, do you want to have money? All of them will tell you yes, right? No kid will say, oh, no, I don't want to. Right? So do you want to become wealthy? Do you want to be richer? Do you want to have more money? Saving is the way to do it. I'm telling you right now, start it right now. That's my expectation. And go. This is a 1, 2, 3 minute conversation. And you start it. Start it with $5 a week, with $2 a week, with $1 a week. Doesn't matter. Start. Then after a few weeks, months, adjust it. Say, hey, I see that you have issues. I see that you have a problem. Doesn't matter.
Right. And I think families who wonder even where a child's allowance could come from, I would discuss ideas for making some extra money with your child. It could be like having a sale, putting things for sale online. Most kids are more tech savvy than their parents, and they can show you, look, Mom, we can sell your clothes that you don't wear anymore. We can sell them online. And you can give your child a percentage of that or all of that, whatever the case may be. But there are ways to work with your child to create funds for an allowance. And you can both be learning about finances at the same time, as you mentioned earlier. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Okay,
Great ideas. Yeah.
Well, thanks. Thank you for that. I would love to hear more about Jazzby because I really don't know much about it. It is a family finance app that you have developed, and I would love to hear about the problems that it solves for families and the benefits that it has.
So Jazzby, I always tell people, is the way for families to move money. And it's a mobile payment app and card. And we connect kids, teenagers and kids and younger kids. We connect their parents and we connect grandparents. So 3 generations in a family. The idea is that the adults give money to the kids for, again, parents normally is allowance and chores and doing good in school. Grandparents is mostly holidays and, birthdays and stuff like that. And the adults would give money to the kids in a fast, immediate, digital way. The way that our kids live today is only digital. It's only through their phones or tablets if they don't have a phone, and so on. So give money the way that they understand the world, which is digital, right? So it's super easy. It takes, I can tell you again, Jazzby started a lot from my own frustration. I started giving my kids allowance when I was still in my previous company in Credox, and I used to travel like crazy. And they were, I think, my older was in first grade, and I did a deal with him that I'll give him $3 every Sunday. And then what happened is that half the time I would forget. I just didn't remember. The other half, I didn't have $3, like in cash. And it became a hassle because I would when I would remember, I would go to the supermarket and try to get $10 and give me 10 ones, and I don't know. And I had a secret drawer and I would keep all those ones. It became a thing just because I didn't have $3. And the third half of the time, I would travel and I wouldn't be home, right? And the whole thing, and then even after so I would forget or wouldn't have it or whatnot, and then once in 3 weeks I would remember and say, oh man, I owe you $12, so here you go, right? So I thought to myself, one, that's a very, very bad example because I promised that I'm going to do something and I constantly don't, and it doesn't make me look very good. But even more so, whenever he wanted to use it, what would he do with it, right? We live in a small rural place in Massachusetts, and most of what he wanted is some games on the iPad, and the cash didn't help him at all. Right. So I started thinking, if it's so difficult for me, it's probably so difficult for a lot of people. And so more than anything, it's the play here is about making it easy and convenient and making it tailored to what you want. So some families would say, hey, I do automatic allowance. So every week on a Sunday, that amount, and you can easily do this with the app. Some families say, I don't want to do automatic because I want to control. So I decide when and how much I'm going to give. And you can do that. You can set up chores or not. You can set academic rewards or not. Anything you want. It's super easy, right? So that's one. Second, we have a lot of features and more to come. This is still, a young company and a young product. So everything is always developing and we're always adding more. But we're trying to let you, as a kid and as a parent, say, hey, here's I want to save. Here's I want to donate. So we work with 25, I think, nationwide charities. To give you, for example, anything from American Cancer Society to Girls Who Code to the Conservation Fund. Anybody can find something that he or she likes. So you say, hey, I want your do good budget and what it's going to be, and everybody can choose, how he wants to do good. And then there is spend. And the spend is done in 2 possibilities. One is that we have in the app, we have an in-house and in-app shop. We call it the Jasby shop. And we sell everything from accessories to electronics to video games to some fashion, like, bracelets and hats and t-shirts and stuff like that. So it's very cool. It's very safe. It's very curated. And I always, with my kids, the younger one, most of like his spend is on the shop. For the older one, my other way of allowing people to spend is through a debit card.
Okay.
So we have the Jasby virtual debit card. It's not a plastic. It's not a physical card, because usually it takes about 3 to 4 days before they lose it. But the one thing that they would never lose is their phone, right? Because it's glued to their hand. So it's a virtual debit card. It works online, anywhere online. It works anywhere that contactless payments are accepted. So Apple Pay, which today is almost anywhere. So you add the card to Apple Pay and you can just use it anywhere. And so, that's what Jasby is. And it becomes easy, and it's kind of educational without you really even knowing it. So one of the things, again, that I've learned over the years is that if I call my kids now and tell them, boys, we're going to talk about interest, it takes 9 seconds for their eyes to glaze, and they're like, Dad, what do you want from us? Right? And even if I force them and say, no, I'm going to tell you about interest, they won't remember. They don't care. Agreed? So most services and most of the places where they teach you financial literacy, it's boring academic lectures that nobody remembers, right? Okay. I believe that the way to learn those things is through action, is through acting, right? So you get some money and you tell them, hey, I want you to save $1 a week. So now you have to do it, right? And you say, okay, so how do I do it? And you find the answer in the app. I want you to donate $1 a week. Okay. How do I donate? Well, look, and who do I donate to? You decide, man. Look at the list. There's 25, and if you have an idea, suggest it so we can add more, right? So you learn those things through doing, and therefore you remember them.
That's very good. Okay, so I have some questions for you, and maybe a suggestion. I always had my kids give their donate money to our church. If that would be possible, to use it that way. I suppose that would be possible because it can be used as a debit card, correct?
Oh, yes. So,
yeah.
So there's two sides to this.
Oh, okay.
On your debit card, you can do whatever you want. So obviously, yes, if your church has the ability to accept a card, it works fantastically great.
Okay.
One of the things that we're looking at, and I'll tell you in a second why it takes us time, is that I want even those who don't choose to have a debit card to just be able to do this from the app the same way that we can donate to American Cancer Society. The problem is, or it's not a problem, and it's completely understandable, is that, we deal with money and with kids. So we are heavily regulated, which as it should be.
Right.
So it's not a click of a button. When we add a charitable organization, there is a long process that we have to go through to make sure that it's really a charitable organization, right? So it's not a click of a button, say, okay, that church and on. So it's bureaucracy. It takes time. But with the card, obviously anybody.
That could work. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So my other question has to do with access and with kids' ages. So what I did to begin with, because I ran into all the same problems that you did with giving allowance, and I have 6 kids, so it was pretty much of a nightmare. And so I found an app that was far less, feature rich than Jasby. But I could just show my kids what their balances were. And so I think my question is, what about kids who don't have their own phone, and what types of devices will your app work on if, for example, you have a child who doesn't have an iPhone?
Okay. So start. There are a few questions there, so let me try.
I know, sorry.
Okay. One is that you don't have to have a phone.
Okay.
And same as, so think about it as an email account. Let's say you have one computer or one tablet. You can log in and the same, like you can have 3 kids use the same tablet, but each one of them their own password and their own username and all of this. So you can share, right? And each one of them would have their own separate account and separate balance. You can show them how much money they have and all of those things. So that's not a problem. On average, so in the United States, the average age in which a kid has a phone, gets a first phone, is 12 when they go to middle school.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
But by the way, it's very late. Most of the rest of the world, yes, most of the rest of the world is first, second grade. We are very, very, yes.
Really? Wow.
Yes,
I had no idea.
Yes. The United States is one of those countries in which the average age for a first-time smartphone usage is very late. Across Europe, in Israel, it's years, 5 years before. Okay. So in the United States, the average age for the first phone is 12.
Okay.
And it goes like that. So some 82 to 85% of the kids 12 years old and above have a smartphone, and about 90% of those have an iPhone. So
is that right?
Yes. Again, the United States is very, very skewed towards iPhone in teenage and early teenage.
All right.
So right now, as we speak, and we are December of 2020, we are available for iOS devices. So iPad, and this is the reason, because our audience is so skewed.
Sure.
Within a couple of months, so within Q1 of 2021, so a couple of months, will also be available on the Google Store. Okay. And then you can use it on any Google-based tablet or phone or whatnot. I would say that in my mind, you can start using Jazzby meaningfully as early as 7, 8.
Okay.
Second or third grade. Depends on how your kid is and how you feel about it. Third grade for sure.
Okay.
And then debit cards. So again, you can have it a 10-year-old. We don't restrict it. I'm just telling you like what I think is, again, meaningful or like makes sense. Anywhere between 10 and 12. And then when the kids get their first phone, which is again on average at 12, then it becomes really, with Apple Pay, they can just use it the same way that you would use your card anywhere else.
Okay.
And the same would be with Google. So again, in a couple of months, we'll be ready for Google Pay, and it will be the same way.
Okay. Well, I have one more question for you about your app because of how I used a very beginning app with my own kids. And that is, can you as a parent deduct money from your child's account? I did this as a disciplinary tactic, and it was incredibly effective. Very, very effective.
So we go back and forth on this. So technically, obviously, because it's the same way for us, the technology part of it is sure. Okay. We go back and forth. And for now, actually, the answer is that we don't allow it because we want this. So we want this to be as
real.
Yes. So we take a step back.
Like real
we have never-ending discussions about two things. About one, we want this to be as close to legacy cash. And I always thought, if I give my son $5, well, I'm gonna come the next day, go into his piggy bank, and say, okay, I'm taking the $5 back. Like that's very. It's very harsh. Right. And so that's at the beginning we said, so again, we go back and forth with this. So now the section that says no, is on top. The other part, by the way, that we constantly have internal discussions is about what's our role into all of this. So how much of a supervisory role Jazzby needs to have. And again, so we try to find the fine line of we're not replacing you as a parent. Right. So, so I'll give you, for instance, we block dangerous activities, right? Obviously you can't use our debit card on a, gambling website.
Right.
Or anything not nice.
Right.
But if whenever your kid buys something, you get an immediate notification, but you don't get to approve every single purchase. Am I making sense there? Because we thought to ourselves, we are not replacing the parent. So if you see that your kid just got $20 and he immediately spent them 5 minutes after, so it's your job to go to him and say, or her, and say, hey, that's not cool. And next time I won't give you $20, or you know what I mean? But it's not our job to block it, because then it becomes like censorship, like where's the line? But we're constantly, discussing this.
Right.
I think, look, my philosophy about this, that it needs to be real. And one of the things, look, having some app that shows you, okay, I just gave you $5, and then it shows $5 and there is a screen that he sees $5. It's very easy and cheap to do, but it's not real. And kids are smart. They're super smart. They're so much smarter. Again, I look at my kids, they're 10 and 12. I remember, I think myself when I was in middle school, I wasn't 1/3 of as smart as they are. So they know it's not real. With Jazzby, and that's the complexity, we close the loop, if that makes sense to you. They can use it real world. They can give to church, and they can buy on Amazon, and they can go to McDonald's and buy a burger. It's real. And they know it's real. So this way they treat it differently, because it's not monopoly money. It's not pretend. Right?
All right.
That's what makes it strong, I think.
Okay, very good. Well, you would deny me my discipline strategy, but I could probably find a way around it.
By the way, we again, tell us what you think, as parents, as users. No, really, like if people want that, I'm super happy to do it. Like, depends
I completely respect and appreciate the philosophy that you have with that. And I mean, I really am serious that I think I could find a way around that.
So my what I do is I tell them, okay, I gave you, I probably made a mistake. So next week, no.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. It could certainly come out of next week's allowance rather than being a deduction. Yeah. All right. Well, very good. Well, I think this is very exciting. It is really, I think it's just an excellent tool that you have created for families and parents. And I so appreciate the wisdom that you have given us for talking to our kids about money, and not waiting until we have perfect finances to start those conversations and to start the education. So this was wonderful, and I really, really appreciate it. And I wish you well with Jazzby as well.
Thank you so much. And for everybody, the service is free completely. So again, on purpose. So there's no blockage. There is no reason why not. And there is no, like, some people can afford it and some not, and all of those things. So if you want to learn more, go to Jazzby. Jazzby is spelled Jassby, and just sign up. So go to jazzby.com.
Excellent. Thank you. And I will put the link for that in the show notes as well. Well, thanks again. And I wish you very well with this app in the coming year.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really fun.
Find the links to my sponsor, CTC Math, and to Jazzby by going to homeschoolsanity.com/teachfinance. Join me next week as we discuss how understanding personality can improve your homeschool. Have a happy homeschool week. Thank you for joining me. Happy, healthy homeschooling can be yours. It begins with one small step. Let's continue the conversation on social media. I'm at Psycho with 6. This has been a production of the Ultimate Homeschool Radio Network.